a band. You hear it?
It is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. The sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current, which are direct.
So if you happen to have any of those, you can definitely catch the lives on there or just wait for the episode to drop. Today I got a very special guest and a topic that is, I guess a warning. This may be a little deep for some people. This may be a little out there, a little bit hard to maybe go along with and understand, but please try your best to pay attention and figure it out. I do think this is a highly interesting topic and probably very, very important, maybe. So yeah, pay attention. Today, and the only reason I'm even saying that is because I have listened to other stuff that you've been on, and I've literally had to stop what I was doing and try to pay attention because it's like you're gonna lose me. So that's why I'm putting that little disclaimer out there now. People may have to go back and re-listen again. But without me rambling anymore, today, as you can see, I have my amazing Canadian co-host with me. What is going on, Teresa? Would you like to say hi to everybody and tell everybody about that amazing podcast you have as well?
Yes. Well, thank you for the lovely introduction. I don't know if I can live up to the hype. You hype me up too much. It's not good. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, thanks for having me back on Occult Rejects. Really looking forward to the topic today. But yeah, people can also find me on your other show, the NY Patriot show, and the Spiritual Gangsters, which focuses more on like personal stories and like cool and aware discussion of current events. So yeah, it's a fun time. People want to check that out. I'm sure all my links are down below and all the rest. And yeah.
Yes, got all your stuff down below. I think I have your link for your link tree, and even in my link tree, the Spiritual Gangsters is there. Yeah, but at least put your link tree, still. Thank you very much for coming on and for all the, this may be first for people, I'm not sure. Have we gone live with your new mic yet?
I don't know.
I think this may be the first live and the first time people have actually seen Teresa has a mic now. So
I know. I feel so professional.
And what's that thing called again? A blue snowball or some shit?
A blue snowball. Yeah.
There you go.
It's a little white ball right here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very
so
good. Sounds so much different. And now to get to the guest. We have the Orgone, or however you pronounce it, I'm probably screwing it up, energy and conscious researcher himself, Leon Southgate. Leon, would you like to say what's up to everybody? Maybe let everybody know who you are, where they can find you, and what other shows and places you have presented your research on.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the intro. Yeah. The Orgone or Orgone, both are correct pronunciations. I think it came from a combination of two words that Wilhelm Reich was the original scientist that the field of orgonomy or the study of orgone is based on. And he was an Austro-Hungarian German, and he traveled across Europe and ended up in America. And he did most of his, a lot of his key work in America, and some of the foundation work in Europe. And he was born in 1897 and died in 1957. Pushed really in a federal jail.
Oh wow!
So
what was he, about 60 years old when he died? I may have screwed up that.
Yeah.
Math. Okay.
Yeah, he would have been, and he's the only scientist to get his books burnt in 3 different countries. As far as I know.
So they didn't want to trust that science, I guess.
No, the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, and the US. The US actually burnt his books twice. People don't believe me sometimes when I tell them that America was book burning relatively recently. I mean, they did it undercover, so it looked sort of okay. But I think 1957 and early 60s, the FDA burnt his books on a spurious accusation that it was advertising. I mean, the mass psychology of fascism is no way advertising for. That's a very key book, which is people have kind of rediscovered it for themselves now with like mass psychology being such a key thing. But Reich was outlining the mass psychology of fascism way back in the 30s, I think it was, or early 40s. That book. And it is still pretty current now. But the FDA burnt that along with other books in last, I think, 1962. Anyway, my work is based on Wilhelm Reich's orgone energy discoveries, and me and well, I started off as a musician, then went into nursing, and then acupuncture. And it wasn't until I finished the Chinese medical course I got an option to do a master's research degree, although I didn't have an undergraduate degree because it was a bit of a fluke with different things, work experience, and the nursing counted for like a third of a degree, and the acupuncture counted for a third, and then experience got me a third. So it was the first time I'd ever done anything academic at that level, and the master's was the hardest master's anyone in the college has ever done, and the statistics were way beyond what the college could cope with, because I actually did an experimental study as part of it. But luckily I got help from Manchester Uni, from a professor there, just helped me for free. And the actual study was done in the US, because I had an American girlfriend at the time that I'd met online, and she lived in Wichita in Kansas, and she's her and her family helped me undertake the practical part of the study, which would have been almost impossible to do in England. Well, for a number of reasons, but environmentally it would have been very difficult, and socially it would have been very difficult, because Americans are much more open to helping with things than British people are generally.
Oh, really?
Well, part of my study involved putting an acupuncture needle in a person's hand, and then attaching it either to a placebo box or a real orgone box, and then measuring the amount of sensation and the type of sensation and the area of the sensation. And I was aiming for 100 people, but to get I ended up getting 72 or 73 people, and to get that number of people in a short space of time would have been like to say to people you don't know, oh, can I stick a needle in you, attach you to a box, and then record how you feel afterwards.
Well, you just had to order from like a hamburger and fries like de Blasio did, and people just, oh, sure. Like a free Shake Shack? Yeah, stick whatever you want.
Krispy Kreme upon needling.
Well, I needed people who were fairly similar, and I needed people who were, and I needed the weather to be similar, because the weather affects orgone boxes. So I needed a space of a week and a half or so where I could get 70 to 100 people to have the process, which takes about 10 minutes per person. and so a week and a half of similar weather is impossible in England, and to get that many people to agree to help would be pretty hard too. But in Wichita, I don't think I've ever thanked Laurie for helping me, so thank you, Laurie. So there was a massage therapy center, an alternative health laboratory and teaching center helped me, and a middle school. So between them, I got 70 people, or roughly. So it was a pretty hard MSc or masters to do, and that really took me. I would have done. I would have been about. I would have been about 31 or so when I did that, and that kind of. I didn't really find my way, what I wanted to do in life till that point, and then after that point, I virtually my whole life, apart from my kids and stuff, I've been totally focused on researching orgone, and it started off biologically. Like the masters was looking at does orgone energy affect acupuncture, and the study confirmed that there was a real effect, a real something real was happening to the orgone energized needle that wasn't to the placebo needle, and then there was a lot of similarities between the theory of Chinese medical theory and an acupuncture theory, and some people, the Germans are often first in a lot of things. There was a professor in Germany who he'd experimented with orgone and acupuncture way back in the 80s, I think, and he'd outlined a few of the parallels, but I pretty much systematically went through and found all the parallels, which there was about 60 theoretical parallels between Chinese medicine and Wilhelm Reich's orgone energy theories. So which indicates it's likely that qi in Chinese medicine and orgone in Wilhelm Reich's Reichian medicine is the same thing, and then the experimental study confirmed it. And then I did start a PhD that was going to look at is orgone real biologically at a Manchester uni, not central Manchester, one of the suburbs of Manchester, and but they got a bit nervous about the lab experiments. They probably would have, if I'd have gone ahead with that PhD, they probably would have been targeted by the government, because
Porton Down wouldn't let you do it there.
Porton Down. No,
you can do anything there, right?
Yeah, just head over there. You can
go over to
whatever you want.
Gennard Island, whatever you say that place.
Well, if I went over to the dark side, they'd probably welcome me at Porton Down.
You know what I was even thinking before, and I'm sorry, like I'm kind of jumping like maybe ahead into what you were saying. Like you were saying earlier about like you were trying to do this, you're trying to get this PhD and you were funding it yourself. You know what I'm saying? You were paying for all this stuff yourself, and you were having problems, I guess, getting it done. And I was thinking, I was like, it's funny. I wonder if the government would have because I know sometimes when you get funding from someone, that automatically means that you have to share your information with them as well.
Yeah.
I'm surprised maybe the government wasn't a little interested in funding you just so they could reap the benefits of your work.
Sure. Well, that's a very key point, really, because the only other researcher who's got a master's that focuses on orgone is Dr. DeMio he's passed away last year, and he was based in Oregon. He ran the Orgone lab, he did funny enough, that some of the same people who helped me with my MSc were based in Kansas, and some of the same people that helped James DeMeo with his PhD. It's utterly bizarre. Out of the whole of America, I think it's called the Center for the Advancement of Human Functioning, so near Wichita. And the exact same person that had helped Jim helped me with my study, but he did an MA with Kansas University, and he showed he gave master's level evidence, good quality evidence that cloudbusters, the big tubes that connected into water, that they have a real effect on the weather, and everything was fine. And I think my master's has changed something across the whole of the West, because the governments used to ignore masters, and they weren't interested in them, and DeMeo got left alone with his cloud busting masters, which was in the 80s. And then he went on to provide even better evidence of cloud busters in Africa, in Eritrea, which wasn't part of an academic paper, but it was, I don't know if it was officially, it was kind of acknowledged at a government level by the Eritrean government, and or it was the Eritrean government knew it was going on, and they got some good results, and then they got pressured by other governments not to do it again. But the sad thing with Jim's work is that he started to do a PhD in cloud busting, and he applied for funding from, and then the government found out, and they pressured Kansas University to stop. I think it was the National Science Foundation, and they pressured Kansas University, and he ended up doing an interesting doctorate about there's this theory of Reich's about armoring, and psychic and physical armoring, and DeMeo looked at how armoring kind of evolved from the desert cultures that took over the prior matriarchal cultures, and he charted its flow across the world, and that's called Saharasia thesis. So if the government hadn't stopped him doing the cloud busting PhD, he'd never have written Saharasia, which was a very key piece of work. So in a way that was good, but after I think now that I've heard people talk about master's applications that they've made, where one person wanted to look into free energy devices, and he'd put together a flawless proposal, and it couldn't be faulted, the proposal, and it was all written in the right language, and it wasn't taking a position, and it was skeptical, and but they wouldn't even consider the proposal. That they flat out refused it just because of the subject.
Yeah, of course.
And
free energy.
I think since my MSc, I think they probably tightened the rules so that no controversial masters or doctorates get through in the West, or in certain topic areas like ether or orgone energy or free energy devices. I mean, maybe that will change in the next few years, but that's certainly the state of play at the moment.
Real quick, before we keep going into it too long, and I even asked you earlier to kind of like give your credentials and all that stuff. Just real quick, though. Well, I'm sure this isn't a quick answer either. Can you give us, the listeners, a basic idea of what Orgone is just now?
Sure. Yeah.
then we'll go back.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
Orgone is life force. It's the same as chi. There's all the energies we're used to dealing with are post-atomic energies. They're just material energies. Like they're all based on particles like electrical electrons, but there's also pre-atomic energies, which is the ether or life force or orgone, and the ether is like a background energy in the universe, and if you've got that background energy, if it's got biological properties as well, then it becomes life force. And my interest now has gone to what are the psychic properties of life force, because Reich actually had a kind of a spiritual awakening in the last couple of years before he passed away, but he didn't have the chance to look into how the psychic side and the spiritual side really dovetail with the life energy side, and so that's why I've concentrated on that, because it's like the missing area of orgonomy. Right, basically outlined how the whole physical universe works, pretty much from biology all the way through to cosmology, but he didn't have a chance to properly consider how life force and consciousness interact. I mean, there's lots of great scientists like Tesla and Mesmer, but they tend to be very focused in one area, whereas Wright covered everything from emotions to amoebas to cloud formation to mass psychology. He was the broadness is just incredible, really, that he covered.
I find it interesting. So you're saying like Orgone is one, I don't even know what cloud busting is either. So when we get to that again, we'll have to discuss that. But you're saying you think that this is also responsible for cloud forming? Or that's really interesting.
Because there is an ether in the sky. So when the ether, if you have a cloud busting tube, then wherever it's pointed in the sky, the ether contracts, and then because the ether is the pre-atomic energy, whatever the pre-atomic energy does, the post-atomic energies follow. So if the ether contracts, then water condenses. So if you point a cloud buster at the middle of a desert sky that's like just turquoise blue, you'll get a contraction of the orgone, and then eventually, or the ether, and then eventually you'll get clouds forming. Or likewise, if you point a cloud buster, say if you're in a very rainy area of Wales or somewhere in Europe, then you point a cloud buster at a cloud's center, it will draw off some of the ether or orgone that's in the cloud, and then because there's not enough ether holding the water together, the water then evaporates. So that's how cloud busters work.
So it can make clouds or disperse clouds.
Yeah. And that's why since 1700s they've been trying to stop people knowing about ether, because our physics is more or less, we've just got half of physics, because the elite keep the ether to themselves and only allow physics into the mainstream that is post-atomic. So post So they say that electrons fly through complete nothingness, and light travels through complete nothingness. And they've had to do a lot of lying to maintain that hypothesis. So, which is a bit too complex to go into now, but that was one of the.
Sorry.
Unless you want to, we can do. Sorry, go on.
Would you? I don't know if maybe this is like a bad correlation or a way to try to compare one to the next, but would you consider maybe Oregon the idea of dark matter?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Because I mean, because the relativity physics doesn't add up.
Well, because even when you said light, all right, if we want to believe the stories about the planets, I mean, those lights are going through darkness. So maybe that darkness is what's keeping that light informed before it gets to you.
Yeah, because Reich believed that light was a local phenomena, and that the orgone energy traveled from the sun, and then when it gets to the Earth, it then illuminates, because the energy from the sun gets excited by the Earth's energy field, and becomes the light that we see.
That's cute.
Yeah. So there's every body is like an energy entity that can excite other bodies, so stars and planets and included. But because relativity physics doesn't add up, so they had to, because they've taken half of physics out, the pre-atomic half of physics, that they've made that verboten, so that they've had to do an accounting measure, so the dark energy and dark matter, because the universe is full of ether or orgone, and that's one way of bringing ether back in the back door, as it were. Because quantum physics could be compatible with orgone. Orgone could be considered another quantum field, but relativity physics is not really compatible with ether and orgone, which is why they invented dark matter. But if you could have a kind of dark matter, orgone is a continuum, so it's going to go from something that's virtually psychic through to something that's energetic to slightly material. So at some point it would become kind of matter. So dark matter is a good description as any, and dark energy.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like you even just explained the Kabbalah, really, just going from a vibration into physical matter. Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. It's interesting because I always assumed that orgone was an actual material, a physical thing. But you're saying, so even our own internal energy is orgone?
That's what Wright believed. It's quite hard to quantify it exactly, but because some people think that orgone, Reich in some places said that orgone was completely mass free, completely material free in its basic state. So it's an energy without mass or matter. I don't know if those are two things are equivalent, but and then in other places, so he kind of implied it maybe had. Well, other people think that maybe it has some level of materiality, but it certainly, at the very least, it's a continuum from completely mass-free, energetic, through to you can condense the non-material orgone into matter. You can create new matter from orgone.
Can you encapsulate orgone? Because there's like
Yeah.
those orgone pyramids. Is that just a scam?
Yeah. No, there's
Okay.
yeah,
Is that just
there's ways.
maybe the ones on Wish.
Right, yeah, the ones on Etsy or something.
Well, that the Orgonite community kind of is that they kind of split off and instead of having like Reich's orgone accumulators had layers, and someone thought of, oh, we could make a matrix and have just put the metal and the non-organic and the organic material in a matrix and make it from resin and metal and crystals, and that works pretty well. But so that's a different way of accumulating orgone fields that gets called orgonite. And but the as for the pyramids, the orgone is like the base energy of the whole cosmos, and different shapes like pyramids have different effects on the energy, like spirals and pyramids and spheres do concentrate the life force. So there is like the Russian pyramids have similar effects to orgone accumulators in many ways. So yeah, there is a real connection between shapes and life force accumulation.
I used to have 3 like little tiny orgone pyramids in my kids' rooms, because people said, oh, it'll help protect against EMF. Like, is that a real thing, that it protects against radiation or electromagnetic frequency?
That illustrates the difference between post-atomic energies and pre-atomic energies quite well, because as an organism, as a human, you mostly run on the life force energies, the ether or orgone energies, and electromagnetic energy is post-atomic generally. So the orgonite pyramids, they'll affect how you interact with the post-atomic energy, but they won't affect the post-atomic energy directly.
I see.
So that unless they were really, really strong, like if you get, like, some people can switch off computers when they walk past them, or they interrupt electronic devices, go haywire when they're around. Well, that's because they got such a strong pre-atomic field. Uri Geller's like this. He can affect electronic devices because his life force field is so focused that, and shamans are like that too.
That's how I shorted my computer.
Yeah,
that's why I'm using the laptop again today.
He broke his computer.
I shorted it out. Actually, I don't know
that's
how.
the problem. See, there.
Like sometimes if you're like very emotionally intense and you touch an electronic device and it goes off, and that could be because your pre-atomic field is so strong that it's overpowered the post-atomic field. But generally the pre-atomic and the post-atomic kind of live separate lives and just interact at the edge. So the orgonite pyramids, they'll boost your field and make you less, make you a bit stronger against the attacking EMF fields. And that's how things like Blue Shield work as well, because they give out like a subtle energy. People call them quantum fields and things, but they're basically giving out a subtle energy field that they've generated electronically, and that kind of reharmonizes your subtle energy field, because EMF, especially from like masts and smart meters, are especially bad because I'm electrosensitive, so I've had to like measure smart meters, and they go. They're like a woodpecker, so that you got this constant woodpecker attacking your auric field with a smart meter. Like the companies say, oh, they're the same as mobiles, but the ones I've measured sound pretty different to mobiles. But yeah, they're two different sets of energies, but you can harmonize one set with these devices. So it's not all pie in the sky. There is some reality to them.
I have a couple of questions for you. I just may hate to interrupt you, but well, I have two. The first one is probably a little bit easier, and then the second one might be a little bit deeper. The first one, you did mention, like, how shapes, we were talking about triangles, spirals, different shapes can all do, different things with energy. Have you ever, like, seen, like, old drawings or glyphs? And, like, you honestly do see all those shapes throughout history being drawn in paintings, walls, all over the place. Have you ever wondered that maybe they had an idea of that and that's what they're referring back to in some of that type of stuff?
Definitely. The spiral shape is a very key shape for increasing orgone energy. And one of the parallels I found between Chinese medicine and Reichian medicine is the, the paisley shape. It's kind of like... it's like a quotation mark kind of shape.
Half of a yin yang,
half of the yin yang. Yeah, that shape. Reich found that's the most basic shape that in orgone biology, because if you can make a living organism from anything, if you got water, heat. Just water and heat, really. I've seen it done with iron filings. It's amazing. But if you heat matter up to incandescence and then put it in water, you get little vesicles breaking off, and Wright called these bions. And one of the most basic shapes of the bion is half of the yin yang shape. So this is one of the 60 parallels I found, which unfortunately my website, I ran out of cash to pay for it because I was a bit skint at the time. So, but it's in this book, but it was on the main bits were on the website. But I'm going to get that back up in some shape or form, and I've at least a synopsis of it. In fact, if you go to the Wayback Machine the archive and put in my old website, which is orgonecontinuum.org, then you can find the synopsis still of the Chinese medicine and Wilhelm Reich.
That's a great way to not pay for the site and still tell people how they can see it. That's awesome. Yeah. Just use the Wayback Machine. You can see it. Love it.
So I did a 3D. I got a 3D version of the yin yang symbol done because the symbols cross over. So. Yeah, shapes have a lot of commonality.
Yeah, the reason I was asking that too is, I'm going to put it this way. This is just my opinion. I guess sounds silly to some people, but let's say I was like this rich and powerful person that was never going to get in trouble for what I was doing. And I was controlling and manipulating people. Would I want them to think that these spiral shapes that are on my stuff means I touch kids? Or would I want them to think that spiral shape means I know how to manipulate energy and is why I'm in control?
Yeah.
Nah, if I'm not going to get in trouble for anything, let them think I touch kids, because then they'll find out exactly how I'm manipulating them. People need to get over this whole pedophile thing with the spiral and actually really consider it's a much deeper level of shit.
I mean, it could be both.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm not denying that either, but...
I mean, that's one of the clever things of the deleters, I call them, that they use symbols on multiple levels, like and they've got rid of most of the shamans and the tribes people with the knowledge of like spirals and ancient architecture, and I believe that in some of the mind control programs they use spirals, and because of the hypnotic, your energy gets drawn into it. But I guess the symbols themselves are neither good nor bad. They're just energy. If someone has an intent to use the energy effects of a symbol in a negative way, then that comes from them rather than from the symbol itself.
Exactly. Yeah,
I mean,
that's you put it there. Yeah, it's also the intentions behind it, really.
Yeah,
yes, I agree with that.
Like church spires. Like apparently, I've got a couple of books on pyramids. Old books from the 70s and 80s on pyramid research, and it's fascinating some of the stuff that was done then. There was a real sort of revival of interest in life force and pyramids and orgonomy and around about the 80s, but it got squashed, especially in this country. It got sort of stamped on before it could really grow. But the one of the things the pyramid researchers found out was that cones are really maybe even more powerful than pyramids. So it's no coincidence that church spires are cone shaped. They've made that on purpose to concentrate the energy. And where I live here near Liverpool, there's one road that it goes in a straight line for miles, and there's a big spire right at the end of this line. So all the energy from the entire district is being channeled along this road up to this spire. So I must go and visit that church one day, because probably if I meditated below the spire, I'd have the energy of the whole of the area, sort of going through my energy field. But that's why sort of
take on that idea.
Yeah, people try and like get places on top of hills and build certain shapes, and I think the Russian name for life force is torsion fields, because they recognize that there's this kind of background pre-atomic energy that has the kind of torsion effect. And interesting thing with the Russian research is that they know that the pre-atomic and the post-atomic is opposite, because they found if you put a psychic in a strong torsion field, the psychic is stronger the more protected they are from EMF fields. So the EMF is reducing our psychic abilities, which is probably not accidental.
It just comes out of all our equipment that we're all using and everything we have in our pockets and in our houses.
Yeah.
Jeez,
I mean,
fuck. Oh, and before I forget, there was and I was thinking it and somebody else actually asked it in the chat, so I was like, oh, let me not forget this question. We were talking, well, you were mentioning like pyramids and the Orgone pyramids and all that stuff. Do you think the pyramids themselves in Egypt and stuff, or pyramid designs, are actually built for maybe doing something with energy?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And even down like I was the first person to repeat Reich's Oronor experiments, because Reich's Oronor original experiments were a bit frightening. No one bothered repeating them properly. I mean, some people tried, were they Italian or Spanish? Some Spanish physicists toyed with aspects of it, but no one did it properly. What Wright did, until I repeated it about 2017, 2018, and one of the stones in the pyramids is slightly radioactive, and the granite, and just the huge amount of granite, like there's enough granite for every cathedral in England apparently, or as one of Napoleon's engineers said, you could put a 6-foot wall around the whole of France with that amount of granite. So there's no way they put that amount of granite in a perfect shape on a perfectly flat platform with Bronze Age tools and wooden rollers. But it's definitely an energy device. It can't be anything else, really. To my mind, and from what I've seen,
Nice.
and it's an orgone energy device, and a sort of, the pyramids have kind of biblical connections, and an orgone has biblical connections, and it kind of ties in with this thing called Oronor, which was Reich's term for orgone against nuclear. But it's come to mean a bit more than that now. There's 3 types of orgone. There's relaxed quiescent orgone, and there's deadly orgone or door, and that's like stuck, dirty orgone that needs to be cleansed and moved. And then there's Oronor, which is energized orgone, and so that's why, like, orgone can do lots of different stuff. It can condense into clouds. It can excite into charged particles. That's why you can get free energy from various devices. It can move in your body as an emotion, and it can move in your mind as thoughts. So the pyramids, because the shape affects the orgone, and the quantity of granite, of stone, affects the orgone, and its placement on the planet affects it, and plus there's a slight nuclear effect from the slight radioactivity of the granite. So you could say it's a gigantic Oronor device of some effect.
That's really interesting. It's almost like as detailed as like doing a fucking ritual. Jesus. You know, like if I was to do a ritual, it's like, well, for me, I was like so anal about it. Like I made sure that I even did like longitude and latitude of like where I was. I had to do like specific hours, specific day. This stuff, it's very interesting.
Yeah, they were. I think the pyramids are really. I mean, there's a guy who does like historical analysis, and he thinks the pyramids have got a key role to play in the future, and I suspect that the Ark of the Covenant was taken from the Egyptians, and was kind of like a mobile pyramid type technology, because the Ark of the Covenant had an Oronor type energy, and the same as the pyramids. So you've got a commonality between the energies. They even had Dr. DeMeo had an orgone room at his orgone lab, which is a room-sized orgone accumulator. It's like a metal-lined room, and the only people I know who had one are Wilhelm Reich and James DeMeo. And when I repeated the Oronor experiments, because I didn't have access to an orgone room, like the original Oronor experiments were conducted in. But I did I accumulated a similar amount of orgone using about, I think it was about 12 different devices together in one cabinet. So it created a really strong orgone field. But in the Bible, there's an orgone room. I think Solomon or Nebuchadnezzar had this gold-lined room, and one time people like suddenly teleported into it. So there's when you get really high concentrations of Oronor, so sometimes strange things can happen.
You know, this is funny that you're mentioning that. Sorry to interrupt, but like you're actually like really kind of going more into what I was another question I wanted to ask. Kind of along with the pyramids, churches, religious places. You mentioned cones before. The shapes of churches, and now you even mentioned gold. The Catholic Church loves their gold. You know, so do you think that those things are with the shapes and the metals that are very common inside of some churches, then with even colored glass, do you think all this really could just be a battery of some sort or something to harness energy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every cathedral and church is a battery. They always put them on high energy points, and I'm sure you'd be able to guess what's the best metal for accumulating orgone.
Is it gold?
Yeah.
Well, it's also great for conducting electricity too.
It's a superb metal for and that's why the Chinese sometimes gold plate acupuncture needles if they want to have an energizing effect on the acupuncture point. Gold plated needles are very good apparently. I mean, my accumulators are generally steel and aluminium because that does a reasonably good job. But gold is the best, and silver's very good too. Silver has a cooling effect, a cooling and calming effect on the life force, whereas gold has a accumulating and energizing.
What about
effect.
Tin?
As in
like tin foil.
The tin foil, right? Aluminum or aluminium. There was some argument within orgonomy over tin foil, because certain accumulators, if they're just made with tin and plastic, sometimes they can have a negative effect on organisms. But that's been reported by I think one person did some studies and found that. But I found that tin's fine as long as you have some steel in the accumulator. Like if sometimes I make orgone acupuncture tubes, which are huge things. They've got like 200 or 300 layers, and I'll take a steel core and then wrap tin foil and plastic round the steel tube, and I find they're fine, don't have any negative. They're quite. So tin foil's fine, but I've on its own is not the best metal.
Gotcha.
But if the energy's being attracted by the tin foil and then it's going through the steel, or it seems to be fine.
Yeah, it's interesting, Leon. I find like how you started your research with acupuncture and orgone and the effects like on the meridians of the body, you know.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about pyramids being on usually ley lines on the earth. So it's like, are pyramids just the like earth acupuncture? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's funny.
I've recently come to think that myself, that the pyramids might be. I mean, this is partly from watching this historical analysis guy from Archaics, because he talks a lot about the pyramids, and I was thinking the pyramids have had a healing effect on the planet, or a balancing effect on the planet's consciousness, and maybe that's why they've tried to strip them down of the outer limestone and like sort of tone down
Degrade them.
degrade the effects, but because they're so big and so central and so well known, they can't really degrade the effects too much, and I think they're having a healing effect on the planet. Well, I suspect that. With other religious sites, I'd suspect that most of the stone circles and churches and have a similar effect on the energy of people nearby.
Maybe obelisks are just giant acupuncture needles.
Yeah. I mean, Demio thought of cloud busting as acupuncture, environmental acupuncture.
Yeah.
So it works in a similar way, because acupuncture, sometimes it energizes and sometimes it moves stagnation.
Yes.
And cloud busters can do the same.
Yeah. That's cool.
Mm.
Oh man.
Do you think there's any? I don't want to get into, because I did have the Amish Inquisition actually did ask me to make sure I ask you about like negative Orgone, but I was thinking about maybe leaving that for part 2, because I would like to have you on again and talk about this even more, because I just feel like this was still just scratching the surface with what we're saying now, you know.
Yeah, cool.
But like I feel like this question that I was going to ask you is almost going into that. Do you think, like, is there examples that you might think is like people understanding Orgone and like trying to manipulate it and stuff? I mean, I guess like even talking about the pyramids and the churches really does kind of get into that. But like, do you see that like prevalent today, maybe in a sense?
Yeah, I do see that. Yeah. I mean, it partly comes for a while. I got into hypnotherapy, and then because of the connection with energy work, I got to know one of the English mesmerists, or people who were looking into studying the work of Anton Mesmer, and he was actually kind of an orgone energy researcher in the 1700s, and he invented something that was quite similar to an orgone accumulator combined with a cloud buster, or and he called it the Baquet. And so they've been suppressing knowledge of the ether and orgone since Mesmer's time, at least. But I mean, they've been officially, governments across Europe suppressed Mesmer's work, and what the reason that ties in with your question is because hypnotherapy was originally a kind of mind orgone practice, and it's much stronger than hypnotherapy, because like hypnotherapy kind of took out the life force aspect that was originally part of it, so that they cut out the life force and made it hypnotherapy. But when it was mesmerism, with the life force and the psychic aspects together, it's really powerful. Like a fully trained mesmerist, he apparently they can do things like put people in instant trances almost, or join two people's energy fields together. So you could, if you put a very strong orgone energy field on something psychic, you could affect people's minds. I suppose that's what magic is, or that's what the negative elite do sometimes, that they have a psychic field and they strongly charge it with orgone and then direct it with people, or direct it at society or individuals, who which is why they suppress they spent the equivalent of tens of millions suppressing Mesmer's work in the late 1700s, for that very reason, because they wanted to keep that knowledge to themselves. But that kind of orgone energized hypnosis, which is mesmerism, it can be used both positively and negatively. So I guess the only defense against that really is that people are aware of how powerful energy fields can be.
Now, I don't know if this is like the best way of trying to say it, but it's like, I guess like if you had, I guess like an energy field, or you have energy, and like couldn't you like throw different sounds and then colors in there to change it and to kind of tailor it to be the energy you want it to be, in a sense?
Yeah, I think a lot of healing is based on those effects, like sound healing or crystal fields. I'm experimenting with that at the moment with my orgone energy setup. I've got like a large cabinet that I've put on its side and put lots of different orgone accumulators inside the cabinet. I meditate by there sometimes, and I'm experimenting with using sound with that field. And I've noticed orgone energy fields seem to be a psychic enhancer. They seem to amplify. So if there's the emotions from listening to music or a sound, it seems to amplify them. That it's
Could it be orgone that makes your hair stand up and gives you goosebumps?
It could be, yeah. I mean, have you ever seen?
Well, it's amplifying a feeling, and then your body's reacting to it.
Yeah.
Well, then you have organs in the church to amplify the music, right? Organs.
Well,
right?
churches are, and there's a huge amount of metal and wood, sort of panelled, and the tubes themselves in a church organ are like cloud busting pipes, and they're near a spire. So I've never thought of that, actually. That's something to look into. Because I mean, I remember one time going to a church and absolutely being blown away by it was a Black African church service, and the emotional power in there was just amazing.
From the singing.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed when there's a band playing? When I was a musician, in the audience too, I've noticed this a couple of times. When the band is really at its peak, sometimes you can see like an aura covering the whole band, and then I think the crowd energizes the band, and then the band energizes the crowd. And when it reaches a peak, that there's you can see an aura around the band. I'd say that's an orgone energy field that's been created by the music and the minds of the people there.
Yeah, definitely. They feed off each other. Actually, I just went to a classical performance in Toronto, and I realized that the ceiling is a spiral shape in the orchestra building. Yeah, I was like, oh, that's funny. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's true. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and that spiral or power up the energy in the room.
Right.
Damn. Oh,
Yeah,
you had
definitely.
mentioned it before, and this actually is a really good time for me to ask it. I think you said it before. You can have like two different orgone energies, and like they'll kind of like sync or connect or something.
Yeah.
I started to think
yeah.
like, is that almost kind of like, like how people use binaural beats? And you could have like, let's say you have like 15, whatever measurement, hertz, whatever they use, and then 17 over here. You'll actually read 16 in the middle. Is that how that will sync up too, or does like with orgone, like does it kind of do that? What you were saying? It's almost like hemi-syncing.
It probably has an aspect of that. Yeah. I should think because it's a bit like an organism. You've like the devices in orgonomy are they're more like an organism than a machine in a way, because they've got an energy field, and each energy field then interacts. So if you put an orgone blanket on, the energy field of the blanket will be stimulated by your energy field, and then that will feed back into yours. And so you kind of get a loop
I was just
going
gonna say
on.
a loop. Yeah, really interesting.
So I guess that there would be some kind of frequencies involved, because an Italian researcher and friend, he's just bringing out a paper soon, and he's found that there's a kind of frequency when you first put an orgone blanket on, or sit in an orgone cabinet, that if someone's field is very low, it kind of has an interaction and then changes over time. So if the Russians would have technology capable of measuring the frequencies, I don't have anything subtle enough to do that, but there is frequencies to orgone, because the Blue Shield devices that supposedly protect you from EMF. I managed to pick up the output of a Blue Shield device on an orgone meter. I had to put the orgone meter at the very top end of its sensitivity. So like if I'd have put my hand near the meter, it would have the dial would have flown to 100%. But I managed to pick up a subtle energy field frequency from this Blue Shield device. So I'm sure the organism and the cabinet, or two organisms, would have frequencies that would meld and become a new frequency. You get a synthesis, I'm sure.
Even though you're talking about the loop, even made me think of like the whole infinity symbol and energy. That's wild. And that is above the magician's head on the tarot card. Interesting stuff.
I didn't catch all of that last bit. I think your mic was dropping out a bit.
Oh, like even on the tarot card of the magician, you have the infinity symbol, and that is kind of like a loop of energy. So.
Yeah, funny enough, I've set the orgone box up to I kind of created an orgone computer almost, as it were, because I took an East European subtle energy device, which it changes it kind of turns a subtle energy field into clicks, or into a movement of a very fine wheel. And pardon me, and using that device, I've managed to get numbers, to turn an orgone stream into numbers. And one of the key numbers that came up originally was 8, when I first interacted with it. And I think that is a key number in my orgone research. And as you say, it's the infinity symbol. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Leon, have you ever heard of the Healy or German New Medicine?
Yeah, yeah. I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Healy is like this little wearable medical device that's
Yeah.
supposed to like siphon energy and like affect your body's auric field for healing or other purposes. And it has this little thing called the Healy coil. So instead of using wires to connect to the device, you use it's literally like a metal coil that you plug in to the machine, and then it can be hands free. Like you don't need to connect the wires like to your wrist or whatever. So I just thought that was interesting. I wonder if it's orgone related.
And do you wear that?
Yeah, you just like clip it on your body, and then it interacts with a app on your phone or like your iPad, and then these different programs pull from the ether like energies to affect your body.
How do you spell Healy? Is it Healy?
Healy.
Yeah. I have heard of German New Medicine. I'll look into that. It almost certainly is working with your orgone field. Because coils are a metal coil would attract the energy, and then I imagine that the coil attracts your energy field, or has your energy field circulates around, then it goes in the coil, and then is rebalanced while it's in the coil, and then goes back out. I imagine that's probably what's happening with it.
Yeah. Well, when you brought up like Wilhelm Reich, I was wondering if he had any links to German New Medicine, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, the orgonomy as a science is the only subtle energy science that has had uninterrupted research conducted in it, really since the 1930s, and there's always been at least 2 or 3 orgone journals published during since Reich passed. Reich had a number of journals and wrote about a dozen books or so. And then after his death, the first orgone journal was actually published from the UK, because the Americans, after Reich had been bumped off in prison, the psychiatrists and doctors were understandably, I'm not criticizing them, they were wary of doing anything, and they're probably wise to let things cool down for a bit. And so the only journal at that time was published in Nottingham by the Ritters, Orgonomic Functionalism, which the only full copy of is in Australia now, because the Ritters moved to Australia. But I've got a couple of original copies of it, which I must put online and share with people. Actually, I'll make a note, share those. So it's had that uninterrupted history, orgonomy, for all the way through. Like now, my recent, if anyone wants to look at my recent papers, if they go to psychorgone.com, which is there's 3 orgone journals current at the moment, and the one I publish in it is called the Journal of Psychiatric Orgone Therapy, and they publish at psychorgone.com, a mix of medical and psychiatric and even philosophy papers. There's the Annals of the Institute for Orgonomic Science, which is American, and the Journal of Orgonomy, which is American. Both of those tend to be more kind of towards the psychology side, but the psychorgone.com, that's psychorgone.com, they publish more of the kind of cutting edge and controversial physical papers. I can't remember how we got onto this subject, but
Healy,
Healy.
German New Medicine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So orgonomy was strong in Germany because like Reich was German originally.
Yeah.
And he was a very Germanic character, and is from a very kind of German background, and so there was quite a lot of work done since Reich passed in Germany and America, the main place, and a fair bit in Italy. Germany, Italy, and Greece. So there's always been a psychiatric community of interested in Reich's work in Greece.
That's interesting. I don't trust Germany and Italy. I think they're big with psyops, honestly.
Well, the Italians, like I did some work with Nick Hayes on the bioform creatures. They're these kind of like orgone amoebas that are in the atmosphere, and one of the contemporaries of, I think he overlapped in time with Wilhelm Reich to some degree. Trevor Constable, he was an orgone researcher who was interested, and he found when he did cloud busting out of planes, and he saw these strange creatures on film, and the Italians really took up this work and ran with it. But the Italian, I suspect the Italian government really knocked that out. But there was a big research group that was really looking into bioforms very professionally in Italy, and me and Nick Hayes have took all, because a lot of their published stuff wasn't available, but myself and Nick put most of the key information from the Italian researchers into a paper that's on PsychOrgone. If you search Nick Hayes or bioforms on PsychOrgone. So yeah, Italy, Germany, Greece, and America. But America's been the key one really, because DeMeo probably was the only one of the main scientists in orgonomy.
I'd even have to say, I think America's doing real good at manipulating energy and mind fucking people right now.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it doesn't manipulate itself out of existence the way it's going. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Having said that, there's some good cloud busting work from Italy as well, from Roberto Maglione, and he's done some really good work on the spiritual side of orgonomy. Like a lot of the knowledge I get about Orinor energy or energized orgone and the Ark of the Covenant is from Roberto. His book is the legendary Shamir, Shamir, which the ancient Hebrews had an Orinor device, but Roberto's outlined it in detail. There is a
or is it the Tree of Life?
And it's the actual Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is some of the, what do you call a priest or a rabbi? There's a book by a rabbi that says the Ark of the Covenant is radioactive, which is true. but it's more than just radioactive. It's actually oronal active. So and the Shamir was the Reich had something. Reich had two secrets, and one of them was what powered the Orgone motor, and he called it the Y factor. And the Y factor probably was a radioactive stimulus of an orgone field, and the ancient Hebrews had something similar, which they called the Shamir. So they would put like probably a rock or a crystal or a stone, a radioactive stone inside the Ark of the Covenant, and then the Ark of the Covenant would go nuts, and that's basically oronal.
That's cool. Isn't that in the Indiana Jones movie? Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah. It's they never reveal what's actually in the Ark of the Covenant though. In that,
it's the same thing in the suitcase from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Never find out what was in either one.
No.
Thank you, Leon. If you don't mind, I would actually really like to get into the cloud busting and the negative Oregon, maybe in part 2.
Sure.
So I think if you don't mind now, I think it's been about an hour and 20 minutes. We'll wrap it up here, and I'd love to get you on in like another week or two and continue this. I really, we'd like to talk more in depth on the other stuff, and I loved it.
Yeah,
I thought this was great. Thank you.
We'll do that.
Thank you so much. Do you want to just remind the listeners, in case they didn't hear at the beginning or they forgot, can you let them know where they can find your stuff? And besides the Amish Inquisition, which you can go find his episode on there, other places that you've also been on, or anything you want to plug?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's my since my website's waiting to go back up again. I've been using my blog mainly, which is leonsouthgate.blogspot.com. I have got a YouTube channel which was Orgone Continuum, but I think it's linked from the blog. And otherwise, just Psych Orgone is a good place to go for my formal articles and papers. And for previous things, I've been on Hapanwo Radio of Ben Emlyn Jones podcast with Nick Hayes, and with Andrew Johnson from checktheevidence.com. There should be an interview on YouTube with him, but mainly the blogspot address for now. And when I get things, I'm trying to get everything on paper at the moment too, because I want to have everything in like a book form too, as well as online. But yeah, for the moment, probably a central spot would be the leonsouthgate.blogspot.
Awesome. After the show, I'll add some of your links if you can send them to me. Because of the way that I have my computer set up right now, because I had to drop off the desktop and I'm using the laptop, I am going to have to like go on my phone and like copy and paste from Twitter and then add it to YouTube. Just I didn't have the time before the show, but after the show, I'll add the links in for the live that's up. So if people happen to catch this, you can find his links. But he's also on Twitter too. You can catch him there. I'll add all that stuff. Thank you very much, Leon. I really appreciate this mind-bending episode. It was very, very interesting. And Teresa, thank you so much for jumping in on the passenger seat with this.
Yeah, it was a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, hell yeah. We'll have to, like I said, in about maybe another 2 weeks, we'll do it again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Would you like to plug yourself again?
Sure. So people can hear more of me over on the Spiritual Gangsters podcast, which is on every major podcast platform, YouTube and Rumble. I have like no Rumble followers, so come there. And also my Twitter is super low, but mostly I'm active on Instagram if anyone wants to connect with me there.
Definitely. I definitely suggest to go hit up that Rumble of hers, because when we start doing lives more on her show again, and whenever we do lives on her show, we will be sending it to Rumble. So it's just another outlet to watch lives. If you don't like YouTube and you like Rumble, will be on there as well. And just a reminder, we're live on Rumble right now, too. So we have Rumble. I would have done Odyssey, but I don't remember the password, so I can't get into my Odyssey account through this laptop. So I didn't go live on there. But in the future, I normally am going live on Odyssey, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So you have a bunch of options to choose from if you don't like using certain platforms. Thank you again, Leon. Thank you again, Teresa, for coming on. I had a great time. Very interesting. Made me think a lot. And I'd like to thank everybody who jumped in on the live as well. We had a bunch of numbers at one point, and we really did throughout the whole time. Thank you. That's what's up. We got Charles in there again. We got Raven, Corey, Jonah. We had Helen, Audrey, a whole bunch of people. You all know who you are. That's why I do these lives. I love to see you all jump in, make comments, and ask